3, 2, 1.
Well, welcome. We appreciate all of the folks who are able to join us both live in the meeting room itself, as well as those who may be watching by live streaming. This is a work of the Tennessee Supreme Court that certainly, in my book, is one of its most important outside of the courtroom. And the role that the mediation community has been playing in Tennessee has considerably grown. So thank you for your interest. Thank you for your support. And if any of you ever have questions that you'd like to pass on, you can send them directly to me, Larry Bridge Smith, or to John. Our contact information is available on the website. So let's convene the meeting unless anyone has any other preliminary matters to address. An agenda has been set out, so I will begin with the approval of the minutes of our last meeting, October 2020, which have been distributed. Everybody had an opportunity to review those. If it's acceptable, I'll accept a motion to approve those minutes.
I move that they be accepted as presented.
Steve moves to accept. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Say it. Anyone opposed? Oh, if all our votes could go that easily. Thanks so much. You also have in your packet mediator reports submitted during the fourth quarter. And you'll notice if you look at them that there are new features that are beginning to be collected, particularly as a result of our COVID crisis. The numbers, frankly, overall are not that surprisingly different from normal quarterly numbers. The thing that we will begin to collect and only began to do so late in the quarter, you'll see on a page that indicates the nature or the means by which these mediations were conducted, both in terms of fee as well as in terms of location. Was it online? Was it video on phone? Was it in person? So I think those numbers are very important to watch. Particularly, we are still in 2 pilot programs with respect to training, but our Zoom mediations being conducted under Rule 31 are really the decision of the parties and the mediator. Of course, we'll talk a little bit about the ADR backlog program, which has just commenced, and that will all be virtual by virtue of the situation that has occasioned it. Any comments or questions relative to those records?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm looking at the numbers, and I imagine we will have ongoing discussions, but I know that one of these is probably my fault, and John Jefferson can bop me on the head for this, but I'm looking at, for instance, October 1 to December 31st General Sessions Court, there's 79 mediations. I know that Nashville Conflict Resolution Center did about 380 in that time because we were doing landlord-tenant, well, they're not, no, I take that back. They are things that either were headed toward General Sessions Court because we were dispersing CARES funds and doing landlord-tenant mediation to get dismissals. I'm not sure. I think that my VORP report, John, am I correct in thinking that I just didn't give you those numbers yet?
Ms. Fiegel, yes, so it's not as smart as you would think. The VORP report, as far as grants, is a separate process, and it's not tied in smartly to the mediation report that's required under Rule 31.
So this is the Rule 31, right? So then I would say that this certainly does not include most of the work done by community mediation centers, because I will say something that we've known for quite a long time. Many of the mediators who do quite a lot of work for us do not report their individual cases. And so there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases that are done, that are Rule 31 mediations, that are not going to show up on this particular report. This is part of what has prompted me to ask whether the mediation centers could not provide the data on a quarterly basis on behalf of the mediators who take cases through us, because that would be something I could do in bulk. And so as opposed to a laborious inputting of case after case after case on an individual basis, if I could provide a spreadsheet for bulk upload, we would have much better data.
Welcome to the ADRC, Sarah, because this is a perennial problem that we've addressed innumerable times. The rule requires the mediator to make that report.
Yep.
And it can't be done, never has been done by a surrogate. So
Okay.
there are two things that you're posing, and one of them is the duty of the professional who has a Rule 31 listing to do what the report requires, what the rule requires of them. The second is a very valid question, and if we're going to change that practice, we need to change either the rule or we need to change policies that are in compliance with the rules. So if I can, I would like to let you, John, and I talk about this sort of offline and see what our options are. But it is a problem that's been immense from the very beginning. We are confident that there are literally thousands of mediations that take place that never find their way into this report. So it doesn't help us not to have those numbers. So can we deal with that? Yes, go ahead.
Oh, just one other comment to kind of add to that is that, yeah, I've looked at all of those rules and everything, but
No,
one thing is when I take a look at the
Gail, can you mute your phone, Gail? We can't hear. You're
sorry.
you're not muted.
when you're looking at this, I noticed that under the recognition program, there are hundreds, but apparently they've not been reported. And
Right.
so I think, again, that simply sort of amplifies the problem that we have and that we have to deal with.
Exactly right. So it clearly deserves a good deal of attention, probably not capable of being resolved in this meeting. So I would ask that we sort of take that, and anyone who wants to be a part of that conversation, CMCs, whomever, let's coordinate with John, and then naturally Steve has to be a part of that as well. And let's see if we can't nail a better way to get that information, okay? The other thing I want to just make a couple of references to is one, a working group opportunity or challenge that awaits us. We have been asked by some of our colleagues in the Rule 31 mediation community to explore the value of considering whether, especially family arbitrators, performing roles and responsibilities, especially with respect to children, might be better served through a rule like our Rule 31, not Rule 31A, which is completely driven by the courts, but Rule 31, to create an additional set of qualifications, criteria, training, and oversight. Because under the existing law, in a decision authored by Justice Janice Holder and unanimous in its opinion, I think dating back to 2005, the state is the surrogate parent for children. And so binding arbitration is not permitted. And that's the rule in virtually all jurisdictions. So the question is, should we look into more information about how other states are handling this? Some are doing it by legislation. The question is, should we consider doing it by rule? And so we'll call for a task force. Justice Janice Holder will chair that task force. Justice Lee and Director Tate have both been solicited for their input, and they both feel like, you can speak for yourselves, obviously, that this is an endeavor worth undertaking. And again, we don't have answers to the question. The question is simply, should we consider creating a Supreme Court rule, either within or outside of Rule 31, for family arbitrators that are going to be in that situation where they're making recommendations, especially with respect to children. So Justice Lee, Director Tate, any comments about that you'd like to make?
I think it's worth, as we discussed, I think it's worth looking into. And I think the procedure, we didn't discuss this, but I think the procedure would be for y'all to come up with a proposal for a rule change.
Mm-hmm.
Will you be changing a Supreme Court rule or the Supreme Court Rule 31 or?
Well, that's to be decided, and we
Okay,
don't have
if
an
it's-
answer to. Yeah, go ahead.
So if it's a rule of procedure, then we need to let the Rules Commission sign. We need to submit that to the Rules Commission to sign off on. If it's a Supreme Court rule, file a petition for a rule change with the Supreme Court. So I guess
Right.
which avenue you choose will dictate what procedure we follow on that.
And-
And the Rules Commission meets quarterly, so we'll need to make sure we get it on their agenda if that's what's needed. And I'm liaison to the Rules Commission, so
Oh, perfect.
I can help
Thank you.
guide them through.
You're all in the right places, Justice Lee. We
We'll
love
see
that.
about that. Thank you.
And because this will directly affect the Rules and Policy Committee, I would hope that at least one of the members of that committee will be able to serve on this working group. Frank, I'll leave that to you and your committee to decide. But I think you need to be a part of the process from the beginning.
Yes, I'll make sure someone's on it. If no one else is available, I'll be on it.
Oh, you just made the right remark. You are the master of rules. So I hope you can. That would be wonderful.
All right, thank you, Larry.
Okay, one last introductory item. Well, two actually. One, I want to thank all of the new commissioners for joining us and for assuming roles, all of you, in committees, including people who stepped into chairmanship roles. The committee roster is before you, but we're deeply appreciative of the work that you're doing. So thank you very much. And the last thing is there's just a passing reference to a project that was proposed to the ABA dispute resolution section last week and approved by them on Friday. And so the materials in your handout with respect to the mediation committee proposal gives you both a document that proposes a particular work group that comes out of and under the oversight of the dispute resolution section of the ABA, but it's not limited to lawyers. I need you to understand this is a very multidisciplinary endeavor to see if we in the mediation community can help look forward as opposed to simply reacting to disputes that are facing or finding their way to court, and in a multidisciplinary way become better problem solvers by virtue of the expertise that we have. So I just pass it on, not that you have any responsibilities, but as an invitation, should you choose to join us. Please let me know, just independently and outside of this meeting, if you're interested. And that the same goes to anyone that is viewing on the streaming site. If you care to be involved in this, please let me know, just by direct communication. That's my report, and so I'll turn it over to John for the program manager's report.
Hey, Larry, can I make one comment?
Certainly.
From the newbies, the arbitration issue, whether or not that should be in Rule 31, it seems to me you guys did a tremendous amount of work separating out Rule 31A from 31. And so I would argue that we should keep it somewhat separate, not just fold it into 31, but make it 31B or something.
So did you just volunteer to work on the task force, Chuck? I think you just did.
I heard him just say that he'd love to work on the task force.
That's what I heard. Okay, well, we have two members of the task force. That's good.
Chuck is running the ground rules.
He'll figure it out pretty quick.
Uh-huh.
Okay, John, back to you. Oh, John, are you on mute?
Mr. Bridgesmith, can you see the PM
Yes,
report?
I can. Yes.
Great. So thank you for that report. I will try to keep my remarks brief and pause for questions. This is the quarterly report. I want to take this opportunity to remind us where the ADR plan has come from and the progress that we made in the last 90 days. Early, just before the ADRC workshop in October, we had a judicial survey and we asked at least 2 questions. Is your court experiencing a growing backlog of cases resulting from COVID-19's effect? And 55% said yes. Question 3, would you be willing to consider mediation as a method to help address these backlogs? And 49 of respondents said yes. Justice Lee and the whole team launched an initiative to put out the ADR plan. And this email was sent to all judges a few days before it was also sent to mediators. There was a press release from the AOC on December 10th with this headline about the new mediation plan that targets backlog of cases in Tennessee courts. Now, looking forward, on January 22nd, we have a 4-hour training for those who wish to be involved in the ADR plan. And there's a link at the top to register for the training. Currently, we have over 200 folks signed up, and we'll be sending out another invite today with more information about the agenda, which follows here. This is run and organized by Mr. Shields and the CMCs across the state. I'm just coordinating and getting the word out and making sure everyone is registered. Pending your questions, I think Mr. Shields will either speak to it now or speak to it later during his report. Any questions here?
We're ready to go, John. I mean, I'll have a short report, but obviously all the individuals on here have been working very hard. And again, I want to say thank you, Justice Lee. I know that the commission and those folks here have been carrying the ball, but without you, we would have no ball to carry. And I want to express to you our profound thanks. This really moves, I think, mediation in a completely, forward motion. And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Justice Lee is fond of football analogies. So now that we're carrying the ball and she has successfully handed it off, I also have to give thanks to the enormous amount of work the CMC groups have provided, Cindy, Sarah, Marcus, the whole gang, as well as the staff. It's just a phenomenal amount of work that you can't fully appreciate without watching it happen. A phenomenal, tremendous outcome, thanks to you all.
Larry, if you're going to use football analogies, let me just add, please don't fire your coach and your director. Let's keep that part out.
Okay. No, the coach will not be fired. Well, at least I don't have any power to do that. Anyway, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, next up is a quick report on the renewal season. As everyone knows, mediators are required to renew every year. It's an annual occurrence in order to stay in good standing as a listed mediator. We have approximately 1,350 listed for the previous year, 2020. As of the end of the year, December 31st, 970 have renewed. That leaves us about 380. That's a 71% renewal rate. And there was a bit of a crush as expected in the last 14 days of 2020, 360 renewed. Just as a reminder where we've come from last year, well, 2 years ago, renewals were done on a PDF form. And last year we pivoted to an ADR portal. And that's a one-stop shop where mediators can do everything they need to do. And last year at this time, we had more than 1,000 that had yet to renew. And we hit the same benchmark of 430 on February 28th, 2 months later. And if you remember, we actually extended the fee increase until February 28th because of that, to help the transition. Now, we did approve 30 CME courses on December 31st, which wasn't a day of business for the AOC, but we were able to do that because of the portal. And that action allowed 60 mediators to renew on December 31st.
Wow.
I should remind everyone that no one should panic because those 380 that have not renewed are still in good standing as listed mediators until April 1st. But on April 1st, they do lapse and they must reapply to the commission with training to be completed in the previous 6 years. Pending your questions here, I'll keep moving on one more thing. If you haven't seen this screen, many of you have, this is the Renew My Listing that everyone clicks on. This is the green button, the green check mark that they're looking for, so they know they have sufficient credits. And this is a dashboard of where mediators can add a new mediation report. They can add their CME if it's not loaded by a provider. They can edit their profile and do everything else here on the dashboard. And finally, we just recently added this in the report options, as Mr. Chairman noted, video conference, phone conference, in person, or some combination of those. And now I will pause for questions.
John, I've got one question, Steve, is that when we come to the recognition, it's talking about 50 hours of pro bono mediation. Is there a place on the report that talks about, I see date of mediation, it says hours spent?
Let's see. Yes. So give me just one moment, or when it comes to your section, I'll be ready to show you where a mediator checks that it is pro bono.
That one could indicate how much time was actually spent. Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's the third screen, I believe, but we can walk through that during your portion to show folks how to check that it's going to be a pro bono mediation and how many hours. I'll be ready for that. Will that work, sir?
Yes. Yep. Great. Thank you, John.
Any other questions before I move into one final item?
Oh, John,
Yes.
the question, if a litigated matter where is suit pending, does that include if it were to become or if it is currently? Because we may do pre-trial, I mean, we may do diverted cases, for example, which if unsuccessful will end up in the courts. And I would think you'd want to track the county.
Are they filed in court?
No,
So that's pre-suit, right?
it's really pre-suit, yes.
Yeah, that's an option.
But these are cases that potentially will end up with suits if mediations are not successful.
And a lot of us do those mediations all the time. So that's a reported matter, whether it's litigated or not, whether the complaint has been filed or not.
So I'm simply asking whether you want in that to clarify the language there. Basically, I mean, is there any reason you don't want to know the county where things would end up were they to reach a court?
John, is that information being tracked in the reports?
No, it's not. I mean, we consider we're looking for the reports when the mediation is complete, and then we may have to dig into that deeper.
This is Gail Ashworth, and that comes up as pre-suit for pre-suit matters. And a lot of times the party will have a choice of federal or state court. So you don't really know where the suit's going to be filed, but I file those, and when it's pre-suit, it does not have a county, and it just comes up pre-suit.
Well, let me ask this question. This is Steve, is that, Sarah, let me ask you this, pre-suit, we're all doing pre-suit, who would have thought that, is that if the case is settled or not settled, I got to file a report, no matter what, and that's going to indicate then, I guess, John, isn't it, when I file my report, it will tell you the location. Can't hear you, John.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to demonstrate it along the way to help folks, but yes, that's right. Again, we're only going to see it when you submit this report and check all the boxes.
I report whether it's settled or not settled, so it will be in the report then, Sarah. That's once it's filed.
Again, this goes back to the mediator's responsibility to file their reports, and
right.
We need to obviously improve our discipline as mediators, but you're absolutely correct. A pre-suit, we don't know where it's going to end up, so we can't identify the court that might be affected by it. But we can certainly locate its geography, but maybe this is another conversation to have offline, because there will have to be some changes of policy to
Yep.
reflect that.
Yep.
So let's add that to our list to deal with the group that's going to be looking at. We'll just create a list. Sarah's requests. Okay, that'll be good.
Mr. Shields, I asked to postpone your question, but we got here anyway, sir. We're on the screen where they put in the total hours of mediation. So you
Okay.
did 10 hours, and then down below here, mediation fees. And so if it comes up as pro bono or court order pro
I
bono.
remember now. Sorry, I just didn't see it on.
Yes, sir. Oh, this is a good learning point for all of us so that we can see what's expected and how we're taking these reports into the pro bono recognition program.
Yep, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
And the last topic, well, let me share the screens. There are screen grabs because a picture is worth 1,000 words, or here more, to let you know that we're continuing to work on the medical debt Hamilton County pilot. We're working with, I'll just stop. You have it in front of you. We are working with stakeholders, Legal Aid of East Tennessee, Erlanger, and the local Hamilton County General Sessions Court, and our technical assistance is being provided by Matterhorn. We are doing spiral development, back and forth, weekly meetings on Wednesday to get feedback and putting in required features in order to get what we call a baseline. And that's the minimum acceptable that we can start testing with users. And we're hoping to have that in the next couple of weeks. There are some pictures that you can see, but in the interest of time, you have them available on your PDF. If you have any questions or comments, send them my way, please.
That concludes your report, John?
It does, sir. Thank you.
No, thank you. And again, our thanks to the staff. What a phenomenal group they are. Okay, let's move into the committee reports. Ms. Reed, as the Credentials Committee, new chair, you want to speak to your requests and ask for approvals.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chairman Bridge-Smith. I am happy to be taking on the role as the chair of this committee, but I have some big shoes to fill with Celeste, and she did such a wonderful job. Once again, the staff has helped us. This is a big undertaking with the number of applications, and it's just extremely organized. And they went through the applications, and 24 of the 32 applications were done correctly. You know, they pass all the requirements. They did a great job. And if anyone has any questions, we can talk about those, but I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 24 recommended by the committee to approve those without dispute. And obviously that we can have any conversations we have. We will be talking about 7 of the ones that out of those 32.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. So those have been approved by the ADRC. Thank you. Okay. Ms. Reed, continue with us, if you will.
Okay, the first one for discussion is an applicant. You can see on the agenda applying for general civil, no baccalaureate undergraduate degree. That's pretty much, I mean, it's a requirement. There's no way around it. We're recommending deferral.
And when you say deferral, that means they've been given an opportunity to provide information to satisfy. Okay,
That's
so
correct.
We're not saying no. We're okay.
That's correct. And I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Steph and John, but I believe they have a year.
That's exactly right.
Okay,
They have a year from the date of deferral. So if
Mhm.
we take a vote on it today, they have 1 year to submit proof of any deficiency.
yes.
Okay, let's deal with all the deferrals in turn, because we can probably approve those or have the commission respond to those in total. You want to deal with the next one? I'm
Sure.
sorry.
For Ferguson Elam, I would recommend deferral and motion for deferral. And I didn't know if there was a second. Had we already voted on that one?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
Let's deal with all the deferrals with a single motion. I think we can do that.
No,
unless there's-
they're different. They have different issues.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The
Then,
first two actually have the same issue, but I believe we need to discuss them individually.
okay, very good.
Not to take any extra time, but I do believe it makes more sense.
Certainly. So is there a motion to approve the deferral of the first listed applicant?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay.
For
The-
applicant Harris, similar situation, needs a baccalaureate undergraduate degree, and I would make a motion for a deferral.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
no. That passes. Okay.
This one is an applicant for a family mediator. This was a tough one because doing all kinds of various mathematical equations, she just doesn't meet the 4-year work experience requirement. She's only 2 months short, and we hate for her to be deferred or not be able to become a mediator just because of 2 months. Some of it was while she was a student teacher. We don't count that. It's not full time. So we're recommending a deferral on her, and we're hoping that she can provide a response, either give us 2 more months of full-time work experience or show us that her previous work experience should be counted differently.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
We have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Those opposed, say nay or no. Okay, that passes. Thank you, Lori. Next.
This applicant does not have a undergraduate degree, but he plans to graduate within 1 year. So we hope that he can make it in within the year. I make a motion for a deferral on him. Or her, I'm
Second.
sorry, I don't have that in front of me. We wanted to make this generic.
We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Larry, I want to, not about the applicant, I want to make a comment about this though, that relates to this situation.
Yes, go ahead.
About 6 or 7 years ago, as a Rule 31 trainer, I received a letter from the ADRC that said that a number of people were applying who did not meet the minimum requirements. At that particular point, I drafted a 1-page that I thought that the ADRC was requiring every trainer to submit to anyone who was applying, to avoid the situation where someone is applying, is paying for the training, going through the training that doesn't meet the minimum requirements. And so I do that. I take that 1 page and do it. I don't know. I'm simply saying that I'm seeing a number of people here because the rule is clear. Section 2 says you have a baccalaureate degree. And so I don't know if that's going to be something that we're going to need to address in some other committee.
I believe it is being addressed. They,
Okay,
all of these applicants came from the same training, and we need to follow up on that. The three that we've talked about without the degree, and it's unfortunate that they appear to have not been aware of it.
This is John. So what all members have shared is correct. This seemed like an anomaly, and we hope we've remedied it, but we're going to work through the Training and Education Committee to make it more formal, and it'll be on Mr. Rudolph's agenda, and I'll assist at that time. In my 18 months, this is the first time we've had a batch that weren't aware of it, and so it may rise to the level of a complaint, and then the Training and Educational Committee will take action there as well. But in the meantime, we're going to try to be proactive so it never happens again. Over.
Okay, is there a motion for deferral on this one? I think there is, and a second. So that was discussion. All in favor of deferring this applicant, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, the motion passes. Next, Lori.
This next applicant is another unfortunate situation, lapsed as a family mediator, and went to training for general civil in 2020. It's valid. We're recommending approval for the general civil, but deferral for family. You know, the lapse is a lapse, and we just have to have a strong stand on that, even if it does seem, you know, unfortunate. So on this one, I would move for her to be approved for general civil and deferred for family.
We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passes. Okay, Lori.
This applicant applied for family law. Our committee reviewed some concerns about a disciplinary history. He or she followed up with a detailed explanation, unlike the first explanation that we found to be unacceptable. And we are now recommending approval. And I would make a motion that this applicant be approved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion passes. Okay.
This applicant is applying for general civil. This applicant, he or she meets all of the rules, and this applicant was not in the batch and initially included that we voted for initially. And so we would like for, I would like to move for her to be, him or her, sorry, to be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
If you're opposed, say no. Motion passes. Lori, can't thank you and the committee enough, as well as the staff. This is a phenomenal piece of work. So appreciate all of the heavy lifting you've done. Let's move on to the Training Education Committee. Marcus, we're ready for your report.
Larry, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we hear you well.
Thank you. I wanted to just say thank you to Larry for the opportunity to be chair on this committee. I appreciate the confidence. I'd like to thank the AOC, John and Steph, and all the wonderful people over there. Your hard work is appreciated by everybody on the board. I'd like to thank Ms. Harris for an outstanding job of being previous chair. Hopefully I don't embarrass you. And I'd like to thank the professionalism of Charles Hill and Leslie Gaddis. I'm sorry I was not there at the meeting last week because of my job schedule, but thank you nevertheless, and look forward to working with you in the future. Now, the items that are on the agenda, we have a training waiver request. This is a situation where an applicant had previously gotten training in a different state and is making a request to the board to utilize that training and be allowed to be listed for the state, as opposed to going back and doing another training under Tennessee approval. This was a situation where the applicant did a general civil training in Georgia in 2019, and then subsequently moved to Tennessee after she graduated law school. If you can look at the agenda, it states exactly what was done, or what the AOC looked at. She completed a 3-credit-hour law school mediation course that included a 40-hour in-person course, the state equivalent to Tennessee. So John and Steph and the beautiful people at AOC, they looked at the information. They thought that it was good enough as far as satisfactory to their needs or for requirements. And I would assume that the training committee that looked at it last week feels the same way as far as the requirements that are given. So this is a situation where I'm asking the board for a vote of approval in regards to this training waiver request, so this young person doesn't have to do another training again. So I'll give that to Mr. Bridgesmith.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would add, just to put a fine point on this, is that oftentimes when applicants are waiving in, they don't have the court experience. That's usually where it hangs them up. But we've confirmed with the applicant through a memo that they are currently working for a legal aid agency in Tennessee, and they've gained that experience. They also have the court experience through CASA, and you see the law degree that also had a court process component. So we have no concerns. They've paid the waiver fee, and we've processed this as a proper waiver. Over.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Marcus. Wait a minute, we haven't taken a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Marcus, take us to the next one.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Secondly, this I do believe is out of that batch that Ms. Reed was talking about in her situation. It looks like in regards to the Training and Education Committee that the AOC brought us to attention to us about several applicants submitting their applications and not having that minimum requirement of a baccalaureate degree. This is where I yield discussion to the board. Like John said, this could be just a situation where it was just one bad situation, but I don't want to see it to be a trend moving forward. So is there anything else do you think that the board can do to make sure that these folks look and make sure that they have everything they need as far as submitting their application, as far as requirements is concerned, a checklist or something to that nature? I mean, it's one thing I can only speak for myself. When I started to do this, I made sure I had all my ducks in a row before I submitted this, but I don't want to, speak ill will of anybody who did not do that. So if there's any kind of suggestion or thing that we can do to possibly assist this so this doesn't become a trend.
Well, I guess I jumped the gun a little bit. I apologize, Marcus. I didn't realize, I didn't look at this carefully enough. That's what I was referring. There was a real problem a number of years ago. I drafted a one-page document that said, here are the current requirements. In addition, best practices are on my training. I put down, please see section 14, et cetera, for requirements. I then had suggested to the ADRC a number of years ago. I thought it was approved. I then understood that there may be some confusion. I followed up to whoever was the chair at that point and said, here is the one-page document that sets forth that every trainer should provide to those applying who are pursuing their Rule 31 listing. And that's all they're doing is pursuing it at that particular point. And so I don't know if that's, I don't know why we couldn't require that. We can, the content of the training and that sort of thing, but I think every trainer should send out in advance that exactly what you're talking about, Marcus Rudolph, a checklist of points.
Other conversation?
When we met with the Education Committee last week, this issue came up, and John was kind enough to show us the actual wording that is in the agreement that trainers have. And I believe that wording mentioned that they had to alert potential clients of the requirements. And in the committee, we suggested maybe we add the word qualifications to be more clear about the fact that they needed to cover things like the baccalaureate degree.
Well, yeah.
Other comments? So that recommendation was shared at the committee meeting last week. And John, is there any difficulty in requiring or requesting, requiring would be a better word, but making certain that our trainers share that information prior to signing up and paying more than $1,000 to get trained?
No, I don't see any concerns at this time. So for background and context, trainers, all of our approved trainers must recertify at the beginning of the calendar year. Usually we do that in the first week of January, but we kind of held on that, seeing that something might come out of this meeting in this area or some other. So we'll just add it to the information and the requirements that go out for recertification. I'll work with the committee to massage the language, whether that's a form that they must sign or whether that's the trainers saying, we have informed all participants, all attendees of the requirements.
I don't think this requires a formal board vote, a commission vote, but if anybody sees it otherwise, say so and we'll take one. But I think this is really a policy practice that we can adjust and make certain is followed unless anyone feels differently about that. Okay, hearing no objection, we'll just let the committee deal with that and make certain that certifications from this point forward include that recognition and the commitment to share that information prior to training. Okay, thank you, Marcus. Next.
The next two agenda items in regards to the agenda for the ADR plan virtual training this coming Friday, and also the virtual pilot trainer program, which states all the programs that the board has approved to commence with the virtual pilot. I'm going to yield to my colleague, Stephen Shields, if he wants to talk about the ADR plan and also talk a little bit more about the virtual pilot program. So he's been so instrumental in that. So I yield to Mr. Shields.
As regard to the training on Friday, I think that those directly involved in the training, as you see up here, all the material by tomorrow will be ready to go. And I would hope that all of you would have an opportunity to look at the material and hopefully join. It is going to be recorded so that those individuals who can't make it on the 22nd then will have an opportunity to go back and to view the material. We view it as critical for the success of this program, which means the success of mediation and the value of mediation to the court system and to the community, to the Tennessee community. So I believe we're all ready to go, I guess is kind of an informal way to say it, is that if anybody's got any questions, certainly feel free to ask at this particular point. I think that Justice Lee has pointed out we need to send out another communication to the courts. Hopefully some of the court personnel will be involved. Larry, I didn't mention to you, I spoke to some of the judges here and encouraged their clerk of the court, who I think is going to sign up for the training.
Great.
Yeah, so that's that, but I guess that may be the appropriate point. I'm not sure, Larry, you tell me. I was going to do it later, but the virtual pilot training program, I do want to make a couple of motions.
Okay, I think that's later on the agenda. If I'm not, yeah, it's the next item on the agenda. So Marcus, go ahead and lead us into that, and then we'll hear what Steve has to say.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, just the information on the agenda are the programs that were approved by the board. Like I said, I will let Mr. Shields talk a little bit more about that, but that is all the information that I need to share in regards to the board, and that's the conclusion of my report.
Thank you so much.
Mr.
Steve?
Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll give a quick recap since what's happened in the last 90 days. So the names of the trainers here on your screen, they've been approved for either the hybrid or the virtual or both in the last 6 months. We approved the 100% virtual in October. And then I provided the chairs with the training counts over the last 6 months as well, so that you're aware of how many have been conducted. At least 5 have not conducted any training yet, but 3 or 4 have conducted anywhere from 13 to 36 students trained in their organization. So that gives us a bit of a range. Of course, they didn't exceed 12 per virtual session. And then there's a survey that's required. We've had difficulty getting attendees to complete that, but we're re-engaging with all our trainers that it is a requirement that all attendees for a virtual program submit this survey. And with that, sir, that's the update. Over.
Well, John, this is Steve. I mean, apparently it's a fairly significant problem. There's been very few surveys that have been completed, and it's one of the requirements of the trainers to get this. I understand you can't force somebody, but am I correct that we've gotten very few surveys back?
That's true, sir. 13 have been submitted.
If I could, just as someone who's grappled with trainees, I would ask, and we have not done one of these yet, but I would say anyone's first go round will be rocky because this is a new process, but we might all learn that now that we see it's difficult, it's pretty simple to say you only get your certification of completion after your survey has been submitted.
Yep.
It just means that we need, as the trainer, we need to somehow be notified that the survey has been submitted.
Well, Sarah Fiegel, that's exactly what's on my mind. The requirement is that they complete 40 hours, okay? So what I'm going to tell my students is that you're going to complete 39 3/4 hours, the last quarter hour is the survey, and until you complete the last quarter of an hour, you're not going to get a certificate. Comments?
I'm just suggesting that until we, if there's a mechanism by which we know they've hit send, I mean, it'd be nice to trade the, send button for the certificate.
Well, John Jefferson is going to have to let me know. John,
that's right. It's good.
If they completed that last quarter of an hour to complete their 40 hours.
That's right. So I have the ability to do that. It would just be communication between the trainer and the PM and saying, I've completed my course and I expect that all 12 members have done a survey. Can you tell me that or not? And then I'll look in immediately and let you know and provide that feedback.
That's, for example, that's something we can build into our workflow now that we know that it's necessary. So that's easy.
Yeah.
So is that a policy and practice that you can assume, folks, that will eliminate any need to do any more formal rule revision or anything? I think that makes sense. Does anybody else have a thought different than that?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Well done. Appreciate all of that work. It continues to help us do our jobs better. All the efforts to iron out any of these wrinkles. So Steve, take us to the Pro Bono Mediation Advisory Committee.
Okay. The advisory committee actually met yesterday. I'm the liaison with the advisory committee. The full committee met, and there were a number of discussions. One, the primary discussion was about the upcoming training, and we talked about the upcoming training and encouraging everyone to attend that training. That was one particular item that was discussed. The other item that probably this links into something Justice Lee said is that 2 of the community mediation centers that were not hubs were concerned that individuals, judges in their community or lawyers or whoever was thinking, well, are we out of business? And what we were thinking about, get a special communication to those courts in their respective jurisdictions in order to send a communication that says that, no, you can still work with the community mediation center that you typically referred your cases to. And in fact, we're going to make that very clear in the training on the 22nd. It is in the training material, and we will emphasize that it's not just the 3 hubs, but it's the other 2. And so we talked about maybe a special communication. We talked about, and this will be discussed among the pro bono committee, and I throw these out in case anybody has any suggestions or ideas, but a couple of things that we're going to be talking about is going to be a pre-suit program like in San Antonio. And San Antonio has had a robust program. And I talked to Linda Seeley. She actually knows the individual down here. We're going to be focusing on funding. And I know that our colleague from Michigan has provided us with the information with the Michigan legislative history as well. And so we talked about funding. That's going to be on the pro bono committee's discussion list, as well as the advisory committee. That was discussed among the advisory committee. The other thing that we talked about to create a united front was, as you'll see in the material that's being presented on the 22nd, we call it Mediation TN. Mediation Tennessee, to create some sort of baseline resource material to provide a united front of the community mediation centers as we go to the legislature, as we go to the governor, as we go to other resources, funding resources. So those was a discussion. The other thing that we discussed that I did not discuss, Larry, was that I only found out about and was told this morning from Linda Seeley, is that I'm going to recommend to the pro bono committee that will recommend is that the Divided Community Project in Chicago, that I guess will have a link sort of to your think tank that you're talking about. But I found out that it doesn't have to be one nonprofit. It can be made up of individuals from our various community mediation centers. And I'm confident that we could get a full grant to go to Chicago to actually address in the community, the Divided Community Project. So those were some matters that were discussed, and they're in the hopper. We've got to start at some point, and so we're going to move in that direction and making recommendations. The other thing is, we've already spoke about this, the presentation to the Judges Annual Conference. I'm set for the trial judges on March the 11th. Now then, Justice Lee, when I talked to John Crawford, I asked if we could get 5 minutes. If Justice Lee could get 5 minutes, sorry, Justice Lee, is that if you could get 5 minutes on the municipal judges and general sessions, and he said he would work on it, and I said, I'm sure we will get it accomplished, John Crawford. And so he's doing that. I've kind of deferred this video testimonial. I'm going to be talking to Sarah and Jackie and others about getting something that we can place on the site when the pro bono committee meets. The other thing that we talked about is the Rule 31 virtual training. And so that involves 2 motions. And so does anybody want to have any other comments about sort of the discussion? There wasn't any motions made during the committee, but it's a robust committee made up of the now 5 or 6. I think one has dropped out. Sarah, help me here. I think it's one of our community mediation centers we can't get in contact with anymore, apparently because of lack of funding. And so the ones that were present, all of them were there, have focused on the funding issue. Well, if there's no comments, then let me move to the Rule 31 virtual training. I've got a couple of motions to make and a discussion. One motion is that the virtual pilot program be extended up to and including December 31st of 2021. That's the first motion. The second motion stems from an email that Jackie Kittrell sent. And Jackie Kittrell expressed to send an email to you, John Jeff, to the commission in care of you. I assume all of you have an opportunity to read Jackie's email. She was very concerned about the limitation and wanted a clarification, and maybe it could be done through a clarification, that there could not be in excess of 3 hours of pre-recorded material. And so when I proposed this originally, what my concern was that I was aware of at least one trainer that was saying, I've got all my stuff already in the can, so to speak, and I'm simply going to put it on there for 40 hours. And that's why I recommended in the first time that there be 3 hours of limitation. Jackie Kittrell has pointed out that she thinks that the rule prohibits only on demand, and that is asynchronous. And she is suggesting that they be allowed to include, and I followed up with a phone call with her, that we expand the number of hours to allow synchronous. And that is where the students and the trainers are actually online. Maybe the students, she says, have been pre-recorded and are now debriefing, et cetera. And so she would like to either have the ability to use that completely, or as we talked about, possibly placing some other hour limitation on there. And after talking to her and a couple of other individuals about this, my motion would be that the trainer could not use in excess of 3 hours of pre-recorded asynchronous material, but may use an additional 5 hours of synchronous material, which would give a total of 8 hours.
Let's take those. Excuse me, go ahead.
No, excuse me. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, let's take those one at a time. The first one is a motion related to continuing the pilot program for these 2 training pilots. Is that correct?
Yes.
Let's deal with that first. You want to make a motion to that effect?
Yes, I move that the virtual pilot program be extended up to and including December 31st of 2021.
Okay, so our agenda needs to reflect the fact and capture the fact that the motion is to continue to the end of 2021.
Yeah, not to July 20th, but to December 31st.
Right, so that we will vote on that motion. We now have a motion. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say no. That motion carries. Did I hear no? I'm just curious. Maybe that was lunchtime creeping up on us. So the second one, I'm wondering if it really requires board approval, because it may simply be a question of interpreting the language of the pilot program, not necessarily changing the pilot program. I see that the reference that John has highlighted may not use in excess of 3 hours of pre-recorded material. Is that the board's language or the commission's language, or is that the language of the group that put together how this would happen? That's a question that I have of John. John, is that the literal language of the board's approval of the pilot?
That is, yes, when the motion was made by Mr. Shields and passed by the ADRC, that exact sentence was in the document. And so we just converted it into our draft application. And that is the application that's on the website and that everyone's been approved under.
Okay, perfect. So Steve, do you want to make a motion to change that language? And what specific language would you make a motion to change?
Let me mumble to myself for a moment, and then let me see if I can come up with it. Trainer may not use in excess of 3 hours of pre-recorded material. The trainer may use an additional 5 hours of pre-recorded material that is presented synchronously.
Okay, so may we add asynchronous pre-recorded material for the first sentence, and then the second sentence? Okay. So if you don't mind, please just make that motion specific with respect to what we would consider to amend this language.
Okay, well, let's let John see if he captured my mumbling to myself first.
Well, you mumbled very well, I must add. Much better than I do when I mumble.
So the trainer may not use in excess of 3 hours asynchronous of pre-recorded material. The trainer may also use not in excess of 5 hours of synchronous pre-recorded material. Did I capture it? Now, I want you to understand, Jackie Kicker would like to, I think, would say that, you know, that to expand that time. I don't know if Jackie's on the program or not, but certainly after my discussion with a number of people, that's my motion today.
Okay, let's deal with it first with the second. Is that motion seconded? Do we have a second?
I think I have a question. I do have a question.
Well, your motion fails by want of a second, Steve. So let's go back and have further discussion. First,
I'm not sure I understand the issue.
Okay, let Sarah start first, and then we'll come back to you, Betsy.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's just I saw her hand flash up there. Go ahead, Sarah.
I think that I was going to probably say what I was. I think that there's enough room for interpretation here that we might only get ourselves in trouble if we try to hammer it out more.
Okay, well stated. Betsy, your turn.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to this. I just don't know what the point is. Maybe I don't understand what the difference. What difference does it make? If it's...
Well, here I'd say, I mean, if we're training, right, we have often used clips of, important films about the power of forgiveness, or, training videos that have been recorded where we will show part of a mock mediation and stop and open up discussion and so forth. Over the course of 40 or 46 hours, those snippets that we take, right, may add up to more than 3 hours.
Yeah.
We are not using those asynchronously. We are using those in discussion, and we've always used them, right? There's never been a problem with our using them. Now the question is, if I were to assign you, for example, the viewing of one of those hours as homework, and then we come back and discuss it, if we get really picky, you could say, well, I've just used that as an asynchronous hour, right? Because we are not all watching it at the same time. And so if I use more than 3 hours of those, I'm now in violation of our.
Okay, I get it.
But like,
I understand.
Well, Sarah, let me ask you this. Maybe let's just go back to the 3 hours and just requires clarification that the 3 hours is pre-recorded, and then that gives you all the elbow room that we need.
John, would you put the language up again so everybody can
Yeah,
consider?
I'm simply saying that we stay with the current language.
Well,
Did I hear a
Just
comment
saying
from
you
someone?
can't have more than 3 hours of homework.
About,
That counts against your hours.
how about going back to Jackie and asking Jackie if she can help us come up with language that would not inhibit the trainers, but would address the issues that Steve is raising?
Well, I had a discussion with Jackie. Jackie's objective was 10 hours total. I asked Jackie, I said, look, if you just had 3 hours on demand, asynchronous, how many more hours, if we want to avoid somebody that might want to abuse this, and I'm not worried about anybody of us abusing it, but when Jackie and I spoke, she suggested that we talked about that if we said, all right, let's come up with a total of another 7 hours, I'm sorry, a total of 10 hours synchronous material. And so, and that was Jackie's thoughts. I hope I'm expressing it correctly, is that 3 hours asynchronous was just simply, here it is, watch this material without any discussion. And then additional hours, though, as Sarah's pointed out, and by the way, Sarah, I do exactly the same thing. I got all these snippets, 10, 15 minutes. And so let me say one last comment. The evil that I was after was simply somebody saying, here you go watch this. All the way up to, 5, 10, 15, all the way to 40 hours. And so I think if we stick with the current language, my intention was not in excess of 3 hours asynchronous. Okay, I don't need to add that word, but in excess of pre-recorded material. I think that then allows then the other community mediation centers and the other Rule 31 trainers to accomplish exactly what Jackie and Sarah had suggested.
And as an English major, I don't like that second sentence.
Nor do I.
Well then, Uncle.
Mr. Chair, I've got
Quickly, bring out your.
That basically
Oh
says
my
we
gosh.
can't train more than 5 hours at all. Or eight. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I've got an observation.
Please, Mr. Ruleman.
I
Frank, go
don't
ahead.
think that online training creates a new problem here. I just think that we are not recognizing that this problem has always existed.
That's right.
And here's the problem. Whether we're meeting in person for training or whether we're meeting online for training, the question is, let's forget the online. Let's say we're in person. And the trainer says, we're going to spend 37 hours together. And then I'm going to ask you at night to review 3 hours of pre-recorded material online. That wouldn't be like any 40-hour training I ever went to. The 40-hour training is 40 hours. So to me, I don't know why we have any asynchronous pre-recorded material, because you don't have it in your in-person training, and it's no different.
Frank, if I may, it's just that you're right. Normally, we would have 12 people in a room and we would all now watch maybe these 2 hours, right, of material.
Sure.
Now, there's no reason for me to ask this whole group to take that 2 hours so that we're all just, everyone is on mute and you're doing it at the same time. This just is simply a matter of convenience. Why not say, we're going to discuss this, so watch this before we reconvene together.
I think it's the sad reality that some, unfortunately, significant number of people are not going to do it.
Well, by the same token, we would have them then simply turn off their cameras. It's like online, then it's like online school, right? And we know what the actual truancy rates are there, right? Then I could just you know, you could be here saying that you're paying attention and, you know, you turn off your camera because, oh, you're having bandwidth issues and you go have lunch. I mean, we can't micromanage or infantilize our participants. They're adults.
That's not what I'm asking you to do. What I'm saying is it's no more impractical for the 12 of us to watch it together online than it was for the 12 of us to get together in a room and watch it. In fact, it's more impractical for us to all get in a room and watch it. It would have been more practical during the in-person days to say, go home and look at this 5 hours and we'll talk about it tomorrow. But we don't do that.
Right.
And there's a reason we don't do it, because it requires a certain number of hours.
Right. So your suggestion then is that we simply take all of those things and say, this is the time we're not going to give you the link to watch on your own time. We are going to basically share a screen and run it at this time.
Just like we shared a classroom and ran it. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we can do that. I actually have no problem with that, thinking about it here together. I don't know about
Okay,
others.
so we need to consolidate this conversation. We're running close to our end time. So Steve, Sarah, Frank, what do you think the solution to our current problem might be?
I think we take out the word asynchronous. Well, we have to have a discussion about whether we are further curtailing asynchronous and
well, presently there is no reference to asynchronous. Presently, it just references pre-recorded material, maximum 3 hours.
then I think we need to expand the 3 hours.
May I make a
Okay.
suggestion?
Sure, please.
If I recall correctly, this originated from a question that Jackie Kirtrell posed.
Correct.
Okay, but Jackie's not part of this discussion. I have to agree with whoever suggested. Maybe we go back to Jackie and figure out what is it she's trying to get to here.
So that sounds like that's a deferral back to the training committee.
Right. I mean, Steve says he's spoken to her, and I believe that he's accurately portraying, but I think we might have gotten sort of off of the track of where she was heading. Maybe not. I don't know. I haven't talked to Jackie about this, but
Yeah, this doesn't feel like it's fully baked just from a
right. That's the way I feel
objector's
about it.
perspective. So
feel
let's
like-
take this back to the training committee and allow Jackie and whoever else wishes to be heard to address this more completely, and then we'll let them deal with it and make a recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, I think
That's
there's something between all of us everybody sitting on a screen and watching a video and being able to go home. There's somewhere in between being able to do both, I think. Maybe not.
I think this has some real strong implications for trainers and how they set up their programs. So I like the idea of going back to Jackie and taking a little more time to refine this language.
Okay, Marcus, that sounds like that's back in your camp. Are you prepared to pick that up and run with it at the next committee meeting?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much. Great conversation. Hopefully that will inform us all. Anything else, Steve?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move to the next. I think it's now grievance committee. And John, you're speaking on that. So give us your update.
Thankfully, no new updates. There are no active mediator complaints being processed. We closed out all previous grievances at this time. Over.
Well, that's a remarkable thing. Although that committee is an extremely important one, I'm really grateful that it's rarely convened. That's a good sign. Leslie, talk to us about the communication committee. I think we may have lost Leslie.
Yeah,
She
she
had
had a
here.
hearing.
Okay. There was a report and there's a newsletter link so that you can see there was no action that she requested.
That's correct. Our standard procedure is to send out a newsletter at least, well, around 30 days afterwards to include an update from any CMCs, pro bono actions, and all the newly listed mediators. And then we've had discussions about engaging more regularly and more effectively with mediators. Over.
And Rick Ladd hasn't joined us, is unable to be here. So his report is simply that there was one opinion that was rendered last year, and it's copied and it's now published on the website. Any other action there that you're aware of, John?
No, the requester has been notified formally, although the requester knew about it, of course, as soon as it was published, and it has been on the website about 10 days after it was passed or announced in October.
Thank you. Frank, your agenda looks empty. Anything you want to share with us from the Rule and Policy Committee?
We do not have any new updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional business that we need to address? New business that needs to be dealt with? Well, there is the item that I referenced at the front end, and that is the creation of another advisory committee, which we have the right under our rules to make ad hoc committee appointments. And so I'm asking for a motion to approve the creation of an ad hoc committee to deal with the question and research and make a recommendation relative to arbitration in family matters under either rule or other response. To the degree that we have any input into that ongoing debate, the working group would be asked to make that recommendation. Do I have a motion to create such a task force? Lori, is that your motion? Okay. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Motion carries. The next application deadline, as you can see on your minutes, is March 2nd for new Rule 31 listings. Our next quarterly meeting will be April the 20th at 10:30 Central. Any other activity or suggestions or motions to adjourn will be entertained?
I move we adjourn.
Chuck, thank you. Second? I think I saw Lori's hand go up. Are you seconding? Okay, great. All in favor, say aye.
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 You all have been fabulous, and we got 10 minutes back in our day. I'm appreciative of that.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
You all
Larry.
take care.
Thanks, Larry.
Bye-bye.
Okay, great meeting.